Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we're continuing with Krishna. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how he married 16,108 wives. But to get us started, let's begin with a recap. Around 5,000 years ago, the king of most of Bharat, now called India, was Pandu. And Pandu had two wives, Kunti and Madri. And when they were out in the forest, let's come to before that even. Two wives, they were Kunti and Madri. And so they'd gone once hunting, and Pandu decided he wanted to, because Kshatriyas at that time, warriors, would hunt. So he was out hunting and he killed a deer who was mating. And it turned out that the male and female were a great sage and his wife. So there were these rishis or sages, extremely wise, extremely incredible beings. And this sage, with all his meditation and tapasya and austerities and penance that he'd done, had developed tremendous powers. Now he had been shot while he was mating with his wife, and he had disguised himself, shape-shifted, you might say, into a deer. The king didn't know that, and so he shot an arrow thinking he's killing a deer, and he ended up killing this sage and his wife. As the sage was dying, he cursed the king Pandu that he too would die whenever he tried to be intimate with his wife. Now, King Pandu had no children yet. At this point, if he did not have any children, there'd be no one to inherit the throne. He was completely devastated. His wife Kunti, on hearing of this curse and seeing her husband in such a hopeless condition, told him that before she got married, the sage Durvasa had visited her parental home and given her a blessing that she could call on any deva, any demigod, and they would appear in person to her. She could ask for anything she wanted. So with her husband's consent, she called on Yama, the god of dharma, of righteousness and justice. And from him, she had and asked for and had her eldest son, Yudhishthir, who was known for his unwavering commitment to truth and virtue. Then she thought, this is great. I have a son, let's have another one. The next one she called on was Vayu, the god of wind. And from him she had Bhim. And he was renowned for his immense strength, courage, and appetite. Yeah, he had big appetite too. It was very strong, like they said, like 100 elephants, 1,000 elephants, I don't know. The third son was Arjun. And he was born of Indra, the king of the devas, of the demigods. And he became the best archer and a skilled warrior, known for his focus and determination. And now, having had three sons, Kunti decided to share the mantra with her co-wife, Madri, Pandu's second wife. And then together they invoked the Ashwini Kumars, the twin physicians of the devas, of the demigods. And through them, Madri had Nakul and Sahadev. And all five of these brothers were known as the Pandavas. Now, this is the scene of Kunti calling on the devas, praying, and with her husband calling forth for a child. And then they have the five Pandavas, the five young boys who were supposed to, the eldest of them, Yudhishthira, was supposed to inherit the throne. However, as things would have it, one day while they were still out in the forest, Pandu was overcome with lust for his wife Madri. And as he reached out to make love to her, he died right on the spot, as the sage had said. At this point, Kunti and her five sons returned back to the kingdom of Hastinapur. And Pandu's blind brother Dhritarashtra was then placed on the throne. Dhritarashtra's sons hated the Pandavas. The Pandavas were these five brothers. They hated them with a passion. The sons of Pandu were good and righteous and loved by everyone. Dhritarashtra's sons were not. They were known as the Kauravas. So Kauravas and Pandavas. And this is what the whole battle of Mahabharata was about, because the Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra, the blind king, hated the 5 sons of Pandavas. Why? Because they were good and righteous. They were, in fact, the rightful heirs to the throne. And so the sons of Dhritarashtra made many attempts to kill them, their own cousins. The latest attempt had been to send the boys and their mother for a vacation. Why don't you guys go for a nice holiday? We have this lovely retreat that you can go to and you can have a wonderful time out there. There's some festivals taking place in that town and you'll have a great time. And so the Pandavas and their mother Kunti went. And they were given a house to live in. And it turns out that this house was made of a flammable substance called lac. And while they were sleeping, the house was set on fire. And it was assumed that the Pandavas and their mother had died in that fire. However, the Pandavas and their mother Kunti had got to know of the plan in advance and escaped into the forest that night. They stayed in hiding for a while. And during their time in hiding, they had many interesting adventures, one of which was the meeting with the sage Vyas. And Vyas told them to go to the Swayamvar of Princess Draupadi. Now, Swayamvar is a place where there is a contest. And in that contest, whoever wins gets to marry the princess. These were the ways of the past, okay? And Princess Draupadi was a heart winner. She was completely, it besotted the minds of all the kings and princes who had come there to win her hand. Now, at this point, Arjun did the impossible. He managed to win the contest. And I'm not going into much detail here because, well, that's part of the Mahabharata, and we've done this in the earliest episode of this series. So I'm not going to get into it here. But that's where Arjun is reaching out to win and wins the contest. And so they bring Draupadi home. And when Arjun announces to his mother, look what we've brought. When they arrive home, their mother was not with them. So when they arrive home, they say, look what we've brought, Mom. And Kunti says, whatever you have, share it with your brothers. Now, this was a time where when someone said something, they did it. They were people of their word. They were not wishy-washy. When they said it, they did it. So when the mother gave her order, whatever you have shared with your, she hadn't even seen what was there. She just said, share it with your brothers. You didn't know that they just brought home a bride and Arjun had been, married to her, and share it with your brothers. And with that command, all 5 of them ended up marrying Draupadi. So this was what is known in today's time as polyandry. Remember, not polyamory, polyandry. This is where one woman has multiple husbands. In time, well, that's them coming back. And Mother Kunti. So in time, all of them returned to their capital city, Hastinapur, which is now New Delhi, where everyone had mourned their apparent death. It was then decided by the elders, when they learned about the plot and they learned about how the sons of the blind king Dhritarashtra had tried to kill their cousin and how they had escaped. Well, then it was decided by some of the elders like Bhishma that the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, the sons of Queen Kunti, should have their own kingdom. Now, instead of giving them a nice piece of land where they could rule peacefully, they gave them a barren desert where nothing was growing. Now, it is to this place that Krishna was on his way to see them. You see, Krishna knew all about what had happened, but he wanted to move things forward. There was a lot. The Pandavas were very intrinsic to Krishna's plan. And what was his plan? to annihilate the world of all the miscreants, of all the troublemakers, of all the evil people that were here, and to re-establish Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma are these spiritual principles by which human beings are supposed to live. And to establish the principles of Dharma all over again, because there was so much of wickedness and evil going on in the world that it had to be stopped. So from here we begin the Srimad Bhagavatam. Once the supremely opulent personality of Godhead went to Indraprasth to visit the Pandavas, who had again appeared in public. So now they'd come back, and now the public had seen them, and they were ecstatic and overjoyed to find the 5 brothers, the Pandavas, and their mother back, because they loved these boys, sons of Pandu. Accompanying Krishna were Yuyudhan and other associates. It is said that almost everyone except Krishna and Balaram had thought that the Pandavas died in the fire. But the Pandavas had come back in public, and Krishna was paying them a visit. When the Pandavas saw that Krishna had arrived, these heroic sons of Kunti all stood up at once. Heroic because they were such powerful warriors. They stood up all at once, like the senses responding to the return of the life air. It's as if your soul had left you, and now suddenly it had come back into the body. There have been cases like that, where people have had near-death experiences. And so in separation from Krishna, who is the soul of all souls, who is the heart and soul of those who love him, they had felt as if their lives were empty. They had missed him greatly. And now that he was back, and just as he appeared, it felt as if their life was coming back into their body. The metaphor used here is quite poetic. When a person is unconscious, the senses do not function, but when the consciousness returns to the body, all the senses come back to life. The heroes, that is the 5 Pandavas, embraced Krishna, and the touch of his body freed them from all sin. Looking at his affectionate, smiling face, they were overwhelmed with joy. So one may raise the question, were the Pandavas sinful? You're saying they were so close to Krishna, they were so intimate friends of Krishna, cousins of... How could it be possible that they were sinful? Well, Jiva Goswami says that the word inasaha here refers to suffering caused by separation from Krishna. That unhappiness was now vanquished by the Supreme Lord's return. And now was a time for greeting each other. And there's an etiquette, right? Vedic culture has a lot of etiquette. Krishna bowed down at the feet of Yudhishthir and Bhim. He's the Supreme Lord. But he bows down at the feet of the elders, Yudhishthir and Bhim. Arjun was his same age, so he embraced Arjun. And he accepted the obeisances from the twin brothers who were younger, Nakul and Sahadev, who bowed down to greet Krishna. Draupadi, the Pandavas' newly married wife, slowly and somewhat timidly approached Krishna, who was sitting on an exalted seat offered him her obeisances. Draupadi and Arjun, in fact, were so devoted to Krishna that they had often been called Krishna because of their devotion to him. And sometimes people who love Krishna are called by his name, the Krishnas. Krishna's companion Satyaki was also given a seat of honor and worshipped, and their companions were duly honored and seated comfortably. Then Krishna's aunt, Queen Kunti, the mother of the 5 Pandavas, approached in great eagerness to see him. She, being his elder, he arose at once, quickly got up and bowed down to her. She embraced him and smelled his head. Her eyes moistened with extreme love and affection. Krishna inquired from her and her daughter-in-law Draupadi about their welfare, and they in turn questioned him at length about his relatives in Dwarka, his family. Queen Kunti was so overcome by love that her throat choked up and her eyes filled with tears. She remembered the many troubles that she and her sons had endured, and then she addressed Krishna, who appears before his devotees to drive away their distress. She said, "My dear Krishna, our welfare was assured only when you remembered us and gave us your protection. by sending my brother Akrura to visit us. So Krishna in an earlier episode had sent her brother Akrura to visit and let her know, and let the family know that all was well. Then she says, for you, Krishna, you are the well-wishing friend and supreme soul of the universe. For you, there is never any illusion of us and them. This is a big statement. There is never any illusion of us and them. You know how today the world is divided over these very words, us and them. My party and your party, my religion and your religion. And she says here, for you there is never any illusion of us and them. You are the supreme soul of the universe. For God, everyone is the same. For that supreme being, we are all the same. There is no distinction of us and them, this religion or that religion. God doesn't have a religion. Get over it. You might have a religion. You might believe in something. That's good for you. If you like that, you have a sense of your group. But don't think your group is superior to any other group. That is arrogance. And arrogance doesn't bring you closer to God. It only takes you away from Him. And so Kunti continues, yet even so, residing within the hearts of all, you eradicate the suffering of those who remember you constantly. So we often talk about how this world is full of suffering. Buddha tried to relieve the suffering of the world by giving the Eightfold Path. Christ tried to relieve the suffering of the world by telling people that they would be saved. But here she says that just by remembering Krishna constantly, we will be eradicated of suffering. Why? How? Here? Now? You mean like I don't have to go to heaven to be free of suffering? Yes, exactly. What she's saying is that in remembering Him, in talking about Him, in hearing about Him, in chanting His name, we are connecting with Him. And as we connect with Him, He and His name are no different. He and His pastimes, which you're reading about now, are no different. He and His image or pictures are no different. So, or His deity or His temple or His devotees for that matter are no different. He is no different than any of them. So when you remember or connect with any of these, you're connected with Him. And when you're connected with it, in the Bhagavad Gita, He says that, Samoham sarva bhuteshu, I am equal to everyone. So while He reciprocates with all souls, with everybody, even those who hate Him, it is natural that those who love Him intensely receive His special attention. So although He's equal to everyone, those who love Him intensely receive His special attention, for they want Him and nothing else. Think about it. They want Him and nothing else. That is the price to get love of God. Otherwise, we love the world. We love our friends. We love our family. We love our dogs, our cats, our house, our this, our that. The other, and we love God. Well, not quite like that. He has to come. We want to put Him first because He is the source of everything. Everything comes from Him. And when you love Him, you love everyone through Him. It's like when you water the roots of a plant. By watering the roots of the plant, you water all the leaves and branches of the plant as well. Now, it doesn't mean we don't take care of the leaves and branches. It doesn't mean we don't care for the people in our life. But we put Him first. He is the root of all existence. Now, at this point, King Yudhishthir said, O Supreme Controller, I do not know what pious deeds we fools have done. See, he is the eldest of Kunti's sons. He is Dharmraj, literally the master of dharma. He is the most exalted of beings, Yudhishthir, the eldest son of Kunti. And he says, I do not know what pious deeds we fools have done so that we can see you, whom the masters of yogic perfection rarely see. So people with all kinds of yogic practices rarely ever get to see God. People of all religions, ask them, have you seen God? No. They might have heard of Him. They might have heard that such a thing exists. They might have seen some picture of something. They might believe someone is God or someone else is not God, whatever. But have you seen God with your own eyes? No. In this case, Yudhishthir and his brothers are not only seeing Krishna, but he's embracing them. He's smiling with them. He's joking with them. He's having all kinds of fun activities with them. So the brothers requested Krishna to stay with them. The Almighty Lord remained happily in Indraprasth, their small barren town that had been given to them. He stayed there during the months of the rainy season, giving joy to the eyes of the city's residents. One day Arjun, the third of the Pandavas, the third eldest brother, third in line, this Arjun, who was also the very powerful warrior and archer, he was the most famous archer of his time. He was the slayer of powerful enemies. He donned his armor, mounted his chariot, and flying the flag of Hanuman on his chariot, he took up his bow and arrow and went to sport with Krishna in a large forest filled with fierce animals. With his bow, Arjun shot many animals, and a crew of servants carried their bodies back to the King Yudhishthir. The slain animals were to be offered in sacrifice on a special occasion. Now, in the purport is written here that Srila Prabhupada often explained, because as Vaishnavas, as devotees, as lovers of Krishna, we don't eat animals, we don't eat meat or fish or eggs. So Srila Prabhupada, our teacher, our guru, explained that the Kshatriyas or warriors would hunt in the forest for several purposes. Number one was to practice their fighting skills. Second was to control the population of ferocious beasts who were a threat to human beings. And finally, to provide animals for Vedic sacrifices. The killed animals would be given new bodies by the power of the sacrifices. Since priests no longer have the power to do that, the sacrifices would now constitute mere killing and are thus forbidden. In the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that the great sage Narad severely chastises King Prachina Barhisat for abusing this principle of authorized hunting. In fact, the king had become like modern sportsmen who cruelly kill animals as a so-called hobby. So back to the Bhagavatam now. After the hunt, Arjun, feeling thirsty and tired, went to the bank of the Yamuna river. The Yamuna river flows along different parts, along with the Ganga in India, in the north of India. Now the two Krishnas, it says, because sometimes he was also called Krishna. He's not Krishna, but he is sometimes called by that name just because he's so connected with Krishna. So they bathed there, drank the river's clear water, and then the great warrior saw an attractive young woman walking nearby. Krishna sent Arjun to talk to her. Arjun approached the exceptional young woman who possessed beautiful hips, fine teeth, and a lovely face, and he inquired, "Who are you? Whose daughter are you, and where do you come from? What are you doing here? Please explain everything, O beautiful one." Her name was Kalindi, and she said, "I am the daughter of the sun god, Surya. I desire to get as my husband the most excellent and munificent Vishnu. And to that end, I am performing severe penances." So penances are when people perform austerities, very difficult things, practice spiritual practices, go into the forest, go into deep meditation, stop eating, maybe for extended periods of times, control their breath in various ways, do very difficult things. Just as when you want to achieve anything in life, you do difficult things. Take on a job, you work hard to get something, right? So in the same way, yogis would perform penances and austerities to be able to achieve spiritual progress. So she says, "I've been performing severe penances. I will accept no husband other than him." Who him? Vishnu. Who Vishnu? The Supreme Lord, the Supreme Being, the Supreme Godhead, who is the abode of the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. May that Supreme Personality, the shelter of the helpless, be pleased with me. I am known as Kalindi, and I live in a mansion my father built for me within the water of the Yamuna river. There I shall stay until I meet Vishnu. Now keep in mind, she is a deva. That means she comes from a different planet, heavenly planets. And they have different capabilities and different possibilities that we are not privy to. So before you go around judging or condemning or saying something, please consider the possibility that there are other things and other possibilities within the world. Since Kalindi was a beloved child of the sun god himself, who would dare disturb her? From this incident, we can appreciate the beautiful spiritual process executed in previous ages by great souls. Unlike the so-called love in worldly love affairs, beautiful Kalindi's love for Krishna was pure and perfect. Even though Kalindi was a tender young girl, her determination to marry Krishna was so strong that she arranged for her father to build her a house in the Yamuna river where she could perform severe austerities until the day her beloved came. So remember, she was wanting to marry Vishnu. Vishnu emanates from Krishna. And when he goes into his Dwarka pastimes, when he leaves Vrindavan and comes to Dwarka, he is there in the world as Vishnu. In Vrindavan, no. He is there as his original self, as the highest incarnation, the highest form, the highest possibility of what God is, the most intimate. But in Dwarka, he is a king. And so therefore, he is in the mood of Vishnu, of awe and reverence, of being a king. So now, here she was, Kalindi, and Arjun went back and repeated all this to Krishna, who was already aware of it. And here's Kalindi. So he went and he got Kalindi and took her onto his chariot and went back to Hastinapur to meet with King Yudhishthir. Upon the request of the Pandavas, Krishna told Vishwakarma. So now Krishna called for Vishwakarma, who is the architect of the Devas. And if you remember, in an earlier episode, we had talked about how Krishna had the entire island of Dwarka constructed with palaces and all kinds of things overnight. Beautiful. Gold and jewels and all kinds of things were done overnight through Vishwakarma. Now, did these people have, these were alien beings, Vishwakarma. They were alien beings from other planetary systems. Did they have amazing powers that they could do these things? Absolutely. You look at today and you go to the pyramids of Egypt, or you go to the Stonehenge and you try to figure out how did they do it? They can't figure it out. But these were alien beings who could do these things. And here we see that example. The entire city of Dwarka was built overnight, and all the residents of Mathura had been transferred there overnight while they slept. Once again, Krishna was asking Vishwakarma to build a beautiful, wonderful, and amazing city for the Pandavas. This city was known as Indraprasth. Upon the request of the Pandavas, Krishna had Vishwakarma build them this amazing city. Supreme Lord Krishna stayed in that city for some time to please his devotees. Now, a lot happened in this place, and we won't go into it, including Dhritarashtra, the son of the blind king Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhan, had come here. And these are the remains of that city. They've been found. So Krishna stayed here for for some time, and on one occasion there was a forest near there, the Khandava forest. He gave it as a gift to Agni, the Deva, the demigod in charge of fire. And in that process, Krishna had become Arjun's charioteer for the first time. Being pleased, Agni presented Arjun with a bow and a set of white horses, a chariot, a pair of inexhaustible quivers, and armor that no fighter could pierce with weapons. When the demon Maya was saved from the fire, so there was a fire there that happened. Agni, the god of fire, had been given that land, so he spread the fire everywhere. But at that point, there was a demon called Maya who was living there, an Asura. Maya Sura was saved by the fire, from the fire, by his friend Arjun, right? So Arjun saved Maya and presented Maya, because of that, because Arjun had saved his life, Maya presented Arjun and his brothers with a beautiful assembly hall. Assembly hall is like a meeting place, a palace-like meeting place, in which Duryodhan would later mistake water for a solid floor. So it had many illusions within that place. It was full of illusory kind of things. You'd see something, but something else would be there. And he had all this kind of magical stuff within that place. And so when Duryodhana had come to visit, they were shocked. Where did this city come out of? They had given the Pandavas a barren piece of land with nothing, where nothing could grow. And now suddenly there was this incredibly beautiful city there. And it was full of all kinds of plants, and it had all kind of beautiful palaces. And they had this wonderful assembly house. And within that, when they went to see, they'd never seen anything like it, because this was from the heavenly planets. They brought it here, constructed it. And Maya, the Asura, had created all kinds of magical events. There was a place there where it seemed like there was water, but in fact there was a solid floor. Another place where there was a solid floor, but it was actually water. So if you didn't know what was going on, you'd be in trouble. And that's what happened to Duryodhana. He felt very humiliated at that time. And he swore, I will kill you guys. Once again, his determination came back. Now, after all this, Krishna returned to Dwarka with Satyaki and the rest of his entourage. Then the supremely auspicious Supreme Lord married Kalindi, the woman he had met, and brought the greatest pleasure to his devotees. Now we're going to talk about a series of marriages that take place, and I'll explain to you in a bit. You'll get to understand something very profound about this just in a few moments. Well, let's continue with the narrative first. So Vindhya and Anuvindhya, who shared the throne of Avanti, were followers of Duryodhana. So Duryodhana is the Kauravas, the cousins of the Pandavas, right? Kauravas, Pandavas. Pandavas are the 5 brothers. Kauravas are their evil cousins. The whole book called the Mahabharata, it's huge. It's like it's 1,000 pages or something like that. But it is an incredible read. If you haven't read it, please do. You will be completely captivated. So when the time came for these 2 brothers, Vindhya and Anuvindhya, who were sharing the throne of Avanti, when it came for their sister Mitravinda to select a husband in the Swayamvar ceremony, they forbade her to choose. The very pious king of Koshal had a young, lovely daughter named Satya, or Nagnajiti. And there were many kings who came as suitors and were not allowed to marry her unless they could subdue. So this was the condition given. This was like you said, there was Swayamvar, they have a contest, right? And whichever prince can win that, can perform whatever was expected of them, that prince gets to marry the princess. So in this case, there were 7 sharp-horned bulls. And these bulls were extremely vicious and uncontrollable, and hated even the smell of Kshatriyas, warriors. You've seen the Spanish bullfights. They'll have 1 bull. Here there were 7 bulls, and you had to fight all 7 of them to be able to marry the princess. So when Krishna heard of the princess who was to be won by the conqueror of the bulls, he went to their capital with a large army. The king of Koshala, pleased to see Krishna, worshipped him by rising from his throne and offering Krishna a seat of honor and substantial gifts. Krishna also greeted the king respectfully. When the king's daughter saw that the most agreeable suitor has arrived, she immediately desired to have him. She prayed, "May he become my husband. If I have kept my vows, may the sacred fire bring about the fulfillment of my hopes." Goddess Lakshmi, Brahma, Shiva, and the rulers of the various planets placed the dust of his lotus feet, of Krishna's lotus feet, on their head to protect the codes of dharma, which he has created. He assumes pastime incarnations at various times. May that supreme personality of Godhead become pleased with me. She knew who he is. She knew fully well that he is that supreme Godhead, the supreme Lord of all lords, origin, the source of the universe, and she wanted him for her husband. King Nagnajit first worshipped Krishna properly and then addressed him, "O Narayan, Lord of the universe, you are full in your own spiritual pleasure. Therefore, what can this insignificant person do for you?" So this king is referring to himself as an insignificant person. And here we think we're so significant. We are matter. We are so great. Our egos are so huge and humongous. The Supreme Lord was pleased with what? With his humility. And after accepting a comfortable seat, he smiled and addressed the king in a voice as deep as the rumbling of a cloud. He said, "O ruler of men, learned authorities, condemn begging for a person in the royal order who is executing his religious duties. Even so, desiring your friendship, I ask you for your daughter, though we offer no gifts in exchange." So Krishna's straight out begging, asking for the king's daughter. The king said, "Who could be a better husband for my daughter than you? You are the exclusive abode of all transcendental qualities. On your body, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi herself, resides, never leaving you for any reason. But to ascertain the proper husband for my daughter, we previously set a condition to test the prowess of her suitors. These 7 wild bulls are impossible to tame, O hero. They have defeated many princes, breaking their limbs. If you can subdue them, you will certainly be the appropriate bridegroom for my daughter." Upon hearing these terms, Krishna tightened his clothing, expanded himself into 7 forms, and easily subdued the bulls. So he expanded it. He cloned himself out into 7 different Krishnas, tackled all the bulls at the same time, simultaneously. Krishna then tied up the bulls whose pride and strength were now broken and pulled them with ropes, just as a child playfully pulls a wooden toy. Then King Nagnajit, pleased and astonished, presented his daughter to Sri Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead accepted this suitable bride in the proper Vedic fashion. The wives of King Nagnajit felt the great ecstasy upon attaining Krishna as the dear husband of the royal princess, and a mood of great festivity arose. Conch shells, horns, drums resounded, along with vocal and instrumental music and the sounds of Brahmins invoking and chanting mantras and invoking blessings. The joyful men and women of the city adorned themselves with fine clothing and garlands. Now, as was the custom, often the king gave a dowry to the couple. Krishna had not asked for anything. But as a dowry, the powerful King Nagnajit gave 10,000 cows, 3,000 young maidservants wearing golden ornaments on their necks and bedecked in fine clothing, 9,000 elephants, 100 times as many chariots as elephants, 100 times as many horses as chariots, and 100 times as many manservants as horses. I haven't done the math, but that sounds like a lot. The king of Koshala, his heart melting with affection, had the bride and groom seated on their chariot, and then he sent them away, surrounded by a great army. Meanwhile, the other people who had been vying for the same princess, these intolerant kings and princes who had come, who had been rival suitors, heard what had happened, and they tried to stop Krishna on the road as he took his bride home. But just as the bulls had broken the king's strength before, Krishna's army broke their prowess now. Arjun was with Krishna at that time, and he was always eager to please his friend, and thus he drove back these opponents who were shooting torrents of arrows. He did this just as a lion drives away insignificant animals. Krishna then took Satya, that was the princess's name, to Dwarka, and they lived there happily. Now 2 more weddings took place. Bhadra was a princess of the Kaikeya kingdom and the daughter of Krishna's parental aunt, Shrutakirti. Krishna married her when her brothers offered her to him. Then Krishna married Lakshmana, the daughter of the king of Madra. Krishna appeared alone at her Swayamvar ceremony and took her away as well. It's the 3rd case. So you'll see that this has happened a few times. And in this chapter now, you've seen that Krishna has by this point married 8 wives. It started with Rukmini. Right? Principal wives of Krishna were Rukmini. Then you had Kalindi in this And then, sorry, Satyabhama and Jambavati were we talked about last time. And then in this chapter, we heard about his marriage to Kalindi, Mitravinda, Satya, Bhadra, Lakshmana. 8 of them were Krishna's principal wives. But then another incident occurred in which he married 16,100 princesses when he killed the evil Bhaumasura who had captured them and was holding them captive. Why did Krishna marry so many women? What judgment would a modern day person pass on him? Yeah, might call him a womanizer, might call him all kinds of things, a playboy. I don't know, they say all kinds of things, right? If you think of Krishna as an ordinary human being, then perhaps you'd be right. But when you understand that Krishna was and is the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Godhead, the source of all creation, and all of us have a loving relationship with Him, and those relationships are unique to each person. Some love God with awe and reverence. That might be you. You might just like to bow down to God and say, I humbly bow down to you. That may be your way. Some want to serve God. How can I serve you? You've done so much for me. I'm so grateful. But people talk of gratitude these days. It's not enough to be grateful. Do something. How can I serve you? Some love Him as their Father. You'll hear most religions, they talk of God the Father. But in the Vrindavan pastimes, you'll see they love Krishna as their son, as their child. And you also see over there, they love Him as their friend, like a buddy. And still others love Him as an intimate lover, while others love Him as their husband. So depending on the relationship you desire with God, He fulfills that desire. And there are, on this planet right now, 8 billion of us. And then what to say of planets all across the universe? How many billions more would there be? And how many souls have come before us, and how many souls will come after us? And out of all these billions and trillions of souls, a few of them come to Krishna. Krishna says, out of thousands among beings, a handful come to me. And out of those who come to me, very few actually know me in truth. See, the point is this, that everybody comes to God. Either hates Him or loves Him. Those who love Him come to Him, usually come because of something that they want from God. To come to God without any desire, ahaituki pratihataya yatma suprasiddhati. The greatest of souls are those who want nothing from God except Him, except to love Him, except to know Him, except to be with Him. Those are the greatest and most evolved souls of all. So these references are found everywhere. It's not only in the Vedas, it's not only in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but even in the Bible you'll find references where God is spoken of as husband. In Isaiah 54:5 it says, "For your Maker is your husband, the Lord of hosts is His name." Hosea 2:19 says, "And I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy." And in Hosea 2:16 it says, "And in that day declares the Lord, you shall call me my husband." The main problem is that we are envious of God. This is the real problem. We are envious of God. If He can have so many wives or lovers, why can't I? We want to enjoy our senses. We want to use what God has created for ourselves. We want to enjoy everything of this world. Pleasure drives all of us. We want, perhaps many of them go through a phase like that, but hopefully they come back around. Hopefully when we understand this principle, we will not want to enjoy the creation separate from the Creator. All right, let's resume. Killing of the demon Narak. After there was an Asura named Bhauma, and Indra had come to Krishna to complain that this Asura, this evil person, this demonic person, had stolen the earrings belonging to Indra's mother, Aditi, along with Varuna's brother and the demigods' playground at the peak of Mandara mountain. So he'd been harassing everybody, in short, right? Indra went to Krishna and informed him of these misdeeds. Krishna then did something very interesting. He took his wife Satyabhama, the second lady who he married, if you remember last week. And then they went on Garuda. So he has this very particular way that he travels is on Garuda. This is Garuda. He's sitting, this is Satyabhama sitting with Krishna on Garuda. So here they are flying on this bird-like creature, right? And they're going to go deal with this matter. Now, typically, in most cases, if he was going to go for a battle into war of some kind, he would go by himself, not take his wife along. But he wanted her to be amused by what was going to happen. So Krishna took his wife Satyabhama with him and then rode on Garuda to Paragyotishpura, which was surrounded on all sides by fortifications consisting of hills, unmanned weapons, water, fire, and wind, and by obstructions, wire. So there were all kinds of fortifications around this place where this Bhauma Sura was there. With Krishna took his club and he broke through the rock-found fortifications, and with his arrows, the weapons that were there. And then with his disc, he has this disc. Vishnu carries a disc. With the disc, he cut through the fire, the water, and the wind. So he has this disc that he can just throw, and it will cut through all kinds of things. And with that, he cut through all the fortification, and with his sword, he cut through the Mura Pasha cables. With the sound of his conch shell, then he blew his conch shell to call the demon out. The sound of his conch shell, he shattered the magic seals of the fortress, along with the hearts of the brave defenders, and with his heavy club, he demolished the surrounding earthen ramparts. The 5-headed demon Mura, who slept at the bottom of the city's moat. So there was a moat, again water. This guy sleeps in water. Able to breathe there, I guess. He's a 5-headed demon. He awoke and he rose up out of the water and he heard the vibration of Krishna's conch shell, a sound that was as terrifying as the thunder at the end of the cosmic age. This guy was powerful, very powerful, shining with blinding, terrible effulgence, glowing, that resembled the sun's fire at the end of the millennium. Mura seemed to be swallowing up the universes with his 5 mouths. He lifted up his trident and whirled it and then hurled it fiercely at Garuda, Krishna's bird carrier, roaring from all 5 mouths. The sound filled the earth and sky, all directions and the limits of outer space until it reverberated against the very shell of the universe. With 2 arrows, Krishna struck the trident flying towards Garuda and broke it into 3 pieces. Next, he hit Mura's faces. He hit his faces with several arrows, and the demon angrily hurled his club at Krishna. As Mura's club sped towards him on the battlefield, Krishna intercepted it with his own and broke it into 1,000 pieces. Mura then raised his arms high and rushed at the unconquerable Supreme Lord, who easily sliced off his heads with his disc weapon. You see that in the picture there. Lifeless, Mura's decapitated body fell into the water, like a mountain whose peak has been severed by the power of Indra's thunderbolt. The demon's 7 sons emerged from there, enraged by their father's death, prepared to retaliate. Ordered by Bhaumasura, Mura's 7 sons followed their general onto the battlefield, bearing their weapons. These fierce warriors fiercely attacked invincible Krishna with arrows. Now remember, Krishna was here alone, along with his wife, sitting there watching. She could have been killed, right? Wasn't going to happen. So they were attacking Krishna with arrows, swords, clubs, spears, lances, and tridents. But the Supreme Lord, with unfailing prowess, cut this mountain of weapons into tiny pieces with his arrows. Krishna severed the heads, thighs, arms, legs, and armor of these opponents, led by Pitha, and sent them all to the abode of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. Narkasura, the son of the earth, could not contain his fury when he saw the fate of his military leaders. Thus he went out of the citadel with his elephants. Krishna and his wife, mounted upon Garuda, looked like a cloud with lightning sitting above the sun. Seeing Krishna, Bhauma released his weapon at him, and all of Bhauma's soldiers simultaneously attacked with their weapons. At that moment, Krishna shot his sharp arrows at Bhaumasura's army. These arrows soon reduced that army to a mass of bodies with severed arms, thighs, and necks, simultaneously killing the opposing horses and elephants. Krishna then struck down all the missiles and weapons the enemy soldiers threw at him. Meanwhile, Garuda, the bird carrier of Krishna, who was carrying Krishna and Satyabhama, struck the enemy's elephants with his wings. Beaten by Garuda's wings, beak and talons, the elephants fled back into the city, leaving Narakasura alone on the battlefield to oppose Krishna. Seeing his army driven back and tormented by Garuda, Bhauma attacked him with his spear, which had once defeated Indra's thunderbolt. But though struck by that mighty weapon, Garuda was not shaken. Indeed, he was like an elephant hit with a flower garland. Bhauma, frustrated in all his attempts, took up his trident to kill Krishna. And even before he could release it, Krishna cut off his head with his razor-sharp disc, or Sudarshan Chakra, as the demon sat atop his elephant. Fallen on the ground, Bhaumasura's head shone brilliantly, decorated as it was with earrings and an attractive helmet. All around there were cries, "Oh my gosh, alas," or others were saying, "Well done." Those cries arose, and the sages and the demigods worshipped Krishna by showering him with flower garlands. The goddess of the earth, Bhumi, then appeared and approached Krishna, because she had been troubled by all these asuras, these demonic people, these evil people who had been troubling everybody. She approached Krishna and presented him with Aditi's earrings, which Bhauma had stolen, which were made of glowing gold, inlaid with shining jewels. She also gave him a Vaijanti flower garland, which is what Krishna loves the most, flowers that are like forest flowers, hand-picked, and Varuna's umbrella and the peak of Mandara mountain. After bowing down to him and then standing with joined palms, the goddess Bhumi, her mind filled with devotion, began to praise the Lord of the universe, whom the best of the demigods worship. Goddess Bhumi said, "Obeisance unto you, O Supreme Lord, O holder of the conch shell, disc, and club, O Supreme Soul within the heart," because Krishna is in everyone's heart. "You assume your various forms to fulfill your devotees' desires. Obeisance is unto you, Supreme Lord Vasudev, Vishnu, the primal person, the original seed of all existence. Obeisance is unto you, O Omniscient One." Here is the son of Bhaumasura. Frightened, he is approaching your lotus feet. So now the son of Bhauma comes out. He is approaching your lotus feet. Since you remove the distress of all who seek refuge in you, please protect him. Place your lotus hand, which dispels all sins, upon his head. Thus entreated by Goddess Bhumi in words of humble devotion, the Supreme Lord bestowed fearlessness upon her grandson and then entered Bhaumasura's palace, which was filled with all manner of riches. There, Krishna saw 16,000 royal princesses whom Bhauma had taken by force from various kings. They were either the daughters or the wives of various kings, and he had taken them by force. 16,000 of them. The women became enchanted when they saw that most excellent of males enter. In their minds, they each accepted him who had been brought there by destiny as their chosen husband. With the thought that may Providence grant that this man become my husband, each and every princess absorbed her heart in the contemplation of Krishna. Krishna had them dress in clean, spotless garments and then sent them in palanquins to Dwarka, together with great treasures of chariots, horses, and other valuables. What is now going to be said is absolutely amazing. So not only did he agree to marry all of these women, 16,000 of them, but he had them all sent to his capital city, Dwarka. He also sent along with them 64 swift white elephants, descendants of Airavrat, who each had sported 4 tusks. These were supposedly descendants of Airavrat, who is Indra's elephant carrier. Krishna then went to the abode of Indra. So now with his wife on Garuda, Krishna took off for a little segue. While all these women are being taken to Dwarka, they went off to see Indra in the heavenly planets. And gave Indra Mother Aditi's earrings. There Indra and his wife worshipped Krishna and his beloved consort Satyabhama. Then at Satyabhama's behest, the Lord uprooted the heavenly Parijata tree and put it on the back of Garuda. So apparently this is one of the most beautiful flowers, the Parijata flower. And Satyabhama wanted it. She says, I want this flower. I want to take the whole tree with me. So they said, all right, we uprooted a tree, put it on the back of Garuda, and they were going to fly back to earth with it. After defeating Indra and all the other demigods, Krishna brought the Parijata tree to his capital. Once planted, the Parijata tree beautified the garden of Queen Satyabhama's palace. Bees followed the tree all the way from the heavenly planets, greedy for its fragrance and sweet sap. Even after Indra had bowed down to Krishna, touched his feet with the tips of his crown, and begged the Supreme Lord to fulfill his one desire. So he asked Krishna to fight with him. Krishna likes to fight. Yeah, sure. But Shukadev says, what ignorance there is among the gods. To hell with their opulence. They have no understanding, no real understanding. Krishna will choose who he wants to fight with. He will designate this person just amongst his loved ones. And he gets them to come here and play a really bad role. That's what he did with so many of these really evil asuras. They were actually great devotees of Krishna. And they had been chosen to play a very negative role. And in that negative role, he then would fight with them. Because he likes sporting. Then the imperishable Supreme Godhead, assuming a separate form for each bride, duly married all the princesses simultaneously, each in her own palace. Listen very carefully. He gave each of them her own palace, 16,000 and plus the original wives that he had. Each of them had their own palace. And he married them simultaneously in their palace by expanding himself into 16,100 Krishnas. Try and follow what I'm saying. You will not be able to figure. If you think of him as an ordinary human being, that will make no sense. That's ridiculous. But if you understand that he is the supreme being, and he has shown many, many times that he is capable of expanding himself. In the Rasa Leela dance, every one of the gopis thought that she was dancing with Krishna exclusively. He had already shown that was when he was about 10 years old. In the case earlier we saw today in the Princess Satya, when he went to get her hand in marriage, he had expanded into 7 Krishnas and defeated all those bulls that were there. Now he expanded himself into 16,000 Krishnas to be with each of the queens in her palace and marry her simultaneously. The Supreme Being Krishna, performer of the inconceivable, constantly remained in each of his queens' palaces, which were unequaled and unexcelled by any other residence. There, although fully satisfied within himself, he enjoyed with his pleasing wives. Like an ordinary husband, he carried out his household duties. Thus those women obtained as their husband, the husband of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, although even great demigods like Brahma do not know how to approach him. With ever-increasing pleasure, they experienced loving attraction for him, exchanged smiling glances with him, and reciprocated with him in ever-fresh intimacy, replete with joking and feminine shyness. Although the Supreme Lord's queens each had hundreds of maidservants, they chose to personally serve him by approaching him humbly, offering him a seat, worshipping him with excellent paraphernalia, bathing and massaging his feet, giving him pan, which is betel nut, to chew, fanning him, anointing him with fragrant sandalwood paste, adorning him with flower garlands, dressing his hair, arranging his bed, bathing him, and presenting him with wonderful gifts. So that was what they were doing. And you can see Krishna himself was there giving them loads and loads of love. Later on, there is a time when Narad Muni himself comes to see, what is this going on? How is this possible? No one can do this. This is not conceivable. And he goes to check out all the different palaces, and he sees in every one of them Krishna is doing something different. In one, he's playing horse and the kids are riding on his back. In one, he's being affectionate with his wife. In another one, he's sitting down to have a meal. In every palace, he's doing something different. How is it possible? And yet, when the morning would come, he would, from all those palaces, Krishnas would come out, all the different clones of him. And they were not clones who were doing all the same. They were clones who were doing different things. All of them would come out and merge into one, and one Krishna would enter into the main palace where he had his meetings with all the governmental stuff, right? So that's the power of Krishna. Do you have any questions? You've got to have questions. Come on now. Does anyone here have questions? I would love to hear what you thought. All right, let's see. Okay, Ray, thank you. Have a good night. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. If some of you are on YouTube or on Instagram and would like to offer your opinions, your comments, your questions, they're all welcome. Now we have a good question. Did the wives get jealous? And certainly at times they did. But Krishna was there with all of them, so I don't think in the case of the wives there was as much jealousy. But in the case, when you go back to Vrindavan, there was some jealousy there. Whenever it seemed like someone was, how the human tendency is, and they were human beings after all, the wives. Whenever human beings see that one person is getting more than the other, they get jealous. You know how that goes. And as human beings, we all want to be the center of attention. We all want to have as much as the other. We all want to be able to have someone love us and give us priority, right? And Krishna would do his best to do that. But even in that, I'm sure there was jealousy. I'm sure they had that. And yet, keep in mind that isn't a virtue. It's something to understand that envy, jealousy, lust, anger, greed, these are all things to overcome. And though we are likely to have them, it is important that we learn that we need to overcome them as well. Hi, David. Any questions? Okay. Any more questions? Did that make any sense? See, these queens were very highly evolved beings as well. However, none of us is perfect. And we are all subject to the same flaws. Let's bring this up here. Does this relationship the wives have with Krishna explain the relationship with God you were speaking about? Mean the same as with us to have with him? Yes, absolutely. We're talking about choosing what kind of relationship do you want to have with God. Please understand that it's not a one-way street. God is not just sitting as your order supplier. He's not the grand Amazon who's just sitting there to fulfill every wish and every desire that you have. That's not why God wants to connect with us. He wants to connect with us and have a relationship with us, a relationship based on love. And everything that we do in this world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Whatever we are inclined to hear exists in its original and pure form there with God. We want love. Why? Why do we want love? Any reason? We want romance. We want pleasure. We want to have a good time. We want to have fun. Why? Because that's how God is. All of that comes from Him. All of that is part of the spiritual world. And that's why you see all these different pastimes, especially in Vrindavan, how Krishna is having such a blast with all his friends. So keep in mind that our relationship with God can be whatever we choose it to be. Do you want to be a friend? Do you want to be a lover? Do you want to be a parent of God? Do you want Him as your child? How do you want to relate to Him? Do you just want to be passive? All that is possible. All right. So again, the idea is that while we believe in God, believing doesn't mean a whole lot. Believing, so what? You believe. I believe the moon is made of green cheese. Big deal. Doesn't make it real. Doesn't make it made of green cheese. But you say, I believe in God. Well, you're not doing anyone a favor. The question is, try to understand God. Try to experience God. Because once you experience something, you'll never back off then. Once I have experienced something, like let's take a drug addict who experiences a particular drug. Once they've experienced it, it's very hard to give up. Not unless they get something better. Right? You can get them onto a more heavy drug from a lighter drug. But when you experience Krishna, when you experience that supreme pleasure, the supreme ecstasy, then you're like, you can offer me millions of dollars. You can offer me the best of drugs. I don't want it. I don't want it. If I have to give up this which I have, then I don't want it. You say, I'll give you $20 billion, $100 billion. Give up your what you've got. For me, what I've got is not a belief. It's not a faith. It's not some knowledge. It's an experience that has happened from within. And that experience, when you have it, you realize there's nothing more priceless than this. And therefore, no amount of money can be equated to this experience. No amount of pleasure, no amount of wine, women, and song, whatever it might be. No. If this has to be given up, no way. Whatever it takes to nurture this inner experience that I have tasted and found, to me that is priceless. And my wish for you would be that you experience it as well. Knowledge is helpful to get there. Faith is helpful. Belief is helpful. But it's only a starting point. If I want to get from one point to another, let's say from LA to New York, right? I've never been to New York, let's say, and someone tells me, here, this is the road, or Google tells me, or whatever. I have to believe that that map knows what the heck it's talking about. And so then I embark on my journey. But if I don't embark on the journey and I keep sitting there doubting the map or the person who's telling me how to get there, then I'll never get to know if such a place as New York exists. I've got to go there, experience it for myself. And when I have experienced it, now I know, yes, I can tell you all about it, at least from what I've experienced. My experience might be limited. Mine is limited as well. But I know that such a thing exists. Not because of some faith or some belief. That was a starting point. That was in day one, right? That was needed back then. Not because of some knowledge. That too was needed on the way. But because of the experience. And faith and knowledge and all those things were needed to have the experience. But once you have the experience, you're hooked. You're hooked for life. So don't come on this path if you don't want that experience, because you will have it. Krishna wants to connect with you. He wants to have a relationship with you, and he will find a way to get to you. Once you come in his orbit, he will find a way to connect with you. And once he connects with you and you have that experience, and so what is an experience? An experience is something you will feel within yourself, a sense of being in a different dimension, which is, in that moment, all your troubles disappear. Reminds me of that song, where troubles melt like lemon drops, that's where you'll find me. Wasn't that? Somewhere over the rainbow. I don't know, it's an old song. I don't know if you heard it from, I think it's from Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Anyway, long, long time ago. But yeah, that's the idea, that all troubles melt at that time. And suddenly you realize you're not carrying any burden. And there's this sweetness in your life, this sweetness that you can tap into at any time. He's always there inside you and all around you, and you can connect with him right here through chanting his name, through kirtan, through reading his books, and you're able to connect. And then each time you connect, you feel that presence. And each time you feel that presence, you're transported into another world. Beautiful. And sometimes in the beginning, it seems a little heavy. It seems a little hard. And in the beginning, it sometimes seems very improbable or impractical. Trust me, everything in the beginning seems hard. You learn to ride a bike. You learn to walk. You learn to talk. You learn to do anything. In the beginning, it seems a little hard. It's no doubt. That's a fact. But if you persevere, if you are willing to just walk a little bit, he will reach out to you and you will get that experience that I'm talking about. All right. Any last things? We've gone on pretty late today. Any last questions? All right. Then in that case, we'll end here and I'll see you next week. Same time. We're here at 6 o'clock Pacific time, 6 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays. And that's 9 p.m. on Eastern. And I think in India, it's morning on Wednesdays at, I don't know right now. You figure it out. All right. Thank you. I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.